Hello, and thanks for joining me. Well, I'm getting ready to put a 3/4 horsepower 3-phase motor on here with a VFD. And the reason I want to do it, I got a 1 horsepower on it now, but the original motor was 1/2 horsepower, so it should be plenty. But the reason I'm doing it is because these belts are extremely difficult to change. You got limited space in here, and it takes quite a while to make a simple speed change. So I'm going to kind of come up with a compromise and change the speeds with the VFD. But the motor I got presents some problems, and that's the reason I got the motor pulled up here. Let me show you what I'm doing here. I was measuring the bolt pattern right there, which I already had a good idea what it was. It's a 56 mounting pattern, but main thing I wanted to see is how far that pulley was from the bottom of this mounting plate. And the reason I was concerned about that distance there, I got a short shaft on this motor, so I'm either going to have to lower it down in the mill where I can put the pulley on it, which is basically impossible, or raise it up and put a shaft extender on it. But I want to keep the shaft extender as short as possible, so I just had to know how much to elevate this motor. Basically what I'm going to end up doing is elevating it about 1 inch and then putting a shaft extender on there, which I'll have to make. Anyway, I need to put the mill back together to make the adapter plate to mount this to the plate that's in there. Well, I was digging through my scrap bin trying to find a piece of steel to make an adapter plate, and I found this. And this was made for the size motor that I got on the mill for the same mount. And it's even got center punch holes there, or dimples or whatever, to drill my mounting holes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chuck this in my four jaw and make it fit this groove to here, to this mounting ring. Drill these holes and tap them for the mounting plate in there. Mount that to there through these holes, and then put a spacer. Hard to explain. Anyway, next step is to enlarge that hole to fit this ring right here. New decision. I think what I'm going to do is mill that slot in, elongate that hole there, mill part of this off, and just stick bolts up through my motor mounting plate in the mill and put a spacer there. Without this raised section in here, I won't even need this. That's what we're going to do, simplify. While I'm about it though, I am going to center this plate on there, scribe a line here and here, and mill that motor mount flat. The reason I'm going to mill that off is so that this flange doesn't run into my pulleys. I don't have to mill them all off, but I might as well. Oh, bearing feels good. All right, now I get to mill that. Might be a little bit of a challenge to hold, maybe not. First I got to put the mill back together. Okay, I'm not going to use this, but it was handy for verifying the hole locations and the size of this base. It's all cut down, ready to go, milled these out, and I got to make spacers to elevate the motor. And this shaft is too short, so I got to elevate the motor so I can make a shaft extension on there. I know that sounds kind of backwards. Let me see if I can explain this. It's a cutaway of the extension I'll make. It's 3/4 inch shaft. They're both 3/4 inch. But in order to get an extension, I got to have a piece that will slide over this. So I got to elevate the motor in order to fit that on there and still be able to fit my pulley right here. So I need to make, at least the way I got it figured, I need to make some 7/8 spacers to elevate this motor. I'm going to make that out of this 1.5 inch bar. I'm going to go ahead and use where the keyway is because I can't use that keyway for much of anything else. It's in the way for most of my projects, so I'll go ahead and use that up. Okay, I'm going to use my spindle stop here. I made this a while back. Got a video on it somewhere. Pretty useful. Yeah. Third time's charm. That locks it in the spindle, and this is the stop that I can adjust. Okay, there's where I got my rod. I'm locking it in place. Now when I set that in there, I can finish the surface or the end and make it a consistent length. Okay, let's give this motor a test. The last time I hooked up a VFD was on my hard hinge lathe, and several viewers commented they wanted to know how to hook it up. Well, I'm not an expert. I hesitate to tell people how to do things electrically, but I'll show the basics, and but don't consider me an expert. But you got line in right here, load, neutral, and there's ground. I didn't hook up the ground, this is just a test. Put the screwdriver through there and put the wire under the terminal and clamp it down. Let me say one thing about terminals. It's worthwhile hooking up good terminals on the ends of your wires, even for a test. And let me show you what I do. There's several kits out there available. Terminals, like, I'm sure everybody's seen these. They call these a spade terminal. I like using terminals like that. That way you put it over a stud and it's secure. It won't come off. But here's the thing I really like. If you're just hooking up wires, especially like on a VFD where there's really small terminals and it goes under a screw, these are great. Take a wire stripper, cut you an end. These terminals here, they're all different sizes. I think I'm using blue on this size. Just fit that over the wire. The wire goes in that little tube right there. And the larger part goes over the insulation. And you take this thing. It's a crimper. Put that over that. That is a very secure end on that wire that you can put under a terminal in a VFD. Or a lot of electronics. That's simple, fairly cheap. I don't remember what I paid for it, probably not more than 25 bucks. Worthwhile. So anyway, back to the VFD. Those are my two power wires. This is 110 volt, 223 phase. Single phase to three phase, 110 to 223 phase. Very cool VFD. Opens up all kinds of possibilities for lower power motors like 3/4 horse. See there? Okay, so those are the power wires, and these are the three-phase wires. They got them W, V, and U. I have no idea what they are or what that stands for, but they're the three-phase wires that you hook up in your motor. And that's it. Follow the motor diagram for your voltage, 220 or 110, 220 or 340 or whatever. Hopefully the motor you have is 220. So right now I haven't got it hooked up to any power switch or anything, so I'm just going to plug it in. We have the VFD powered up. That F51 is frequency 51. In other words, that's 51.6 hertz right there. If I hit run, that's going to run 51.6 hertz. There's 100 hertz, 28 hertz. If I want to, I think you can hit, no. There's run, reverse, and forward. Instant reverse. Isn't that something? Check out this motor shaft. Try doing that with a single phase motor. Okay, there's several other functions on here. All these terminals right here are for an external speed control, on-off switch, reverse switch. I think you can hook it up to a computer somehow. But just all the basics are right there. Run, stop, reverse. But all these functions are for programming it. And this one worked right out of the box. It was not set up exactly right, but it worked just fine. Don't be afraid to change settings. Just remember where they were. If something doesn't work right, you can put it back where it was. I'll discuss a few of the settings you might want to set. This particular worksheet looks pretty doggone complicated, but it is more simple than you think when you start reading it. This column here is variables, P04, P05, P06. So if I want to change something in here, I hit program, go to P01, P02, P03, 4, 5, 6, etc. Let's see, what would I want to change? Okay, here's one right here. Reference frequency. It says 0 to 400 is set at 50 hertz. Well, this is, I'm using 60 hertz, so I want P1 to be 60. So, let's see what I have it set at. P1, hit function. I got it set at 60. This is a decimal point. You can change that to 50. But I want to set it 60, just hit function data again. It takes it, and then you're ready to move on to your next one. If you want to go back to the run menu, you hit program again. I'm set at 53 hertz speed. That's about all I'm going to go into. I will be hooking up a remote speed control and reverse switch and power switch. So I may go into some of these later. I'll have to figure them out. Anyway, that about wraps up the electronics. Kind of hard to get to. Hopefully I won't have to do this but one time. Well, there it is. I like it. That'll have my on, off, forward, reverse, and my speed control there. I'm waiting on the components. That'll be in the next installment. This is pretty much wraps up part one. But next week we'll install all that and give it a test drive. Anyway, thanks for joining me. Be sure and subscribe and ring that bell.